The giant crossbow of Zhuge Liang wasn't built to fight armies. It was built to control fear itself. In ancient China, one brilliant strategist changed the art of war not with armies, but with a weapon so massive it could launch dozens of bolts at once. This was no ordinary machine. It was the giant crossbow of Zhuge Liang. During the turbulent Three Kingdoms period 220 to 280 CE, China was fractured into rival states. Among them, the Kingdom of Shu relied heavily on its chief strategist, Zhuge Liang. Known for his unmatched intelligence, he designed war machines that blurred the line between myth and reality. His most famous? The giant repeating crossbow capable of devastating volleys that terrified enemies. Unlike traditional archers, this weapon multiplied firepower and efficiency on the battlefield. It wasn't just about killing power, it was about psychological dominance. Soldiers facing it believed they were fighting against something almost supernatural. The repeating crossbow, known as the Zhuge Nu, was not entirely Zhuge Liang's invention. It existed before him, but he perfected it. Ordinary repeating crossbows could shoot multiple bolts quickly, but Zhuge Liang scaled the design up, mounting it on frames, giving armies a weapon capable of launching dozens of deadly bolts in seconds. This created both an offensive and defensive powerhouse. Imagine rows of soldiers trying to breach city walls, only to be cut down by a storm of arrows so rapid it seemed impossible to counter. This wasn't just weaponry, it was intimidation through engineering genius. Zhuge Liang understood warfare as more than brute strength. It was about morale. The giant crossbow demoralized enemies before they even clashed swords. Its size and sound alone created panic. Witnesses described the thunderous crack of its bolts and the terrifying whistle as dozens of projectiles filled the sky. This wasn't just technology, it was theater. Zhuge Liang leveraged spectacle, knowing that soldiers who feared the weapon often fought poorly. Even rumors of the crossbow spread faster than the weapon itself, with enemy commanders hesitating to march into territories where it was deployed. Fear became his silent ally. The engineering behind this colossal weapon was remarkable. It wasn't simply a big bow. Its mechanics used levers, cranks, and torsion power, allowing small teams of men to fire it repeatedly without exhausting themselves. Its bolts weren't tiny projectiles, but massive wooden shafts tipped with iron capable of piercing armor, shields, and even wooden barricades. Mounted on wheels, it could be repositioned, making it versatile for sieges or open-field battles. In many ways, this giant crossbow was an ancestor to later siege artillery, like catapults and trebuchets, proving Zhuge Liang's vision extended far beyond his lifetime. But Zhuge Liang didn't stop with size. He adapted the giant crossbow to different scenarios. In defensive city sieges, they were stationed along walls, unleashing devastating volleys against climbing troops. In ambushes, they were hidden, then suddenly unleashed to break advancing enemy lines. Imagine an army confidently charging forward, only to be shredded by a sudden storm of bolts. Even if the crossbow didn't wipe out an entire unit, it broke formations, disrupted morale, and gave Shu soldiers an opening to strike decisively. Strategy and machine worked hand in hand, showcasing Zhuge Liang's brilliance. The weapon's true power lay not only in destruction but in innovation. Traditional Chinese warfare relied heavily on cavalry, infantry, and archery. The giant crossbow disrupted this balance. Cavalry charges lost effectiveness against barrages of giant bolts. Shield walls crumbled under relentless fire, and archers could not match its rate of attack. This technological leap forced enemy commanders to rethink their strategies. Instead of marching boldly, they hesitated, altered routes, or delayed battles, giving Zhuge Liang the upper hand without fighting. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a tool of psychological and strategic manipulation. Legends claim that some versions of the giant crossbow could fire multiple bolts in rapid succession, like an ancient machine gun. Though likely exaggerated, even a semi-repeating mechanism created chaos. Soldiers swore they saw the air darken with flying shafts. This blurred fact and myth, cementing Zhuge Liang's reputation as a near-magical strategist. While historians debate the technical accuracy of these accounts, what matters is perception. Armies believed his weapons were unstoppable, and that belief alone shifted outcomes. In warfare, reality often mattered less than what people thought was possible. The giant crossbow also revealed Zhuge Liang's approach to resourcefulness. He wasn't building machines for show, he was balancing cost and practicality. Unlike complex bronze siege weapons, his designs relied heavily on wood, rope, and iron tips, making them easier to build in large numbers. This meant Shu could deploy them more widely than wealthier states, relying on costly war machines. In essence, Zhuge Liang democratized siege power, arming even smaller units with battlefield-shaking weapons. By doing so, he proved that intelligence could level the playing field against raw wealth and manpower. Despite its ingenuity, the giant crossbow had limitations. Reloading wasn't instant, and its size made it vulnerable if enemies closed in too quickly. Skilled foes sometimes waited for volleys, then rushed before crews could reload. Still, Zhuge Liang anticipated this, stationing infantry around the machines for protection. His crossbows weren't meant to stand alone. They were part of layered strategies that combined psychological shock, mechanical force, and human discipline. Even when imperfect, they elevated Shu's defenses to a level few dared to challenge. What made the giant crossbow legendary was not its longevity, but its timing. During the height of the Three Kingdoms Wars, even a single innovative advantage could tilt battles. Shu was a smaller state compared to Wei and Wu, but Zhuge Liang's inventions gave it symbolic power. His genius convinced allies and enemies alike that Shu was far more formidable than its size suggested. It was this perception, not raw force, that kept Shu in the struggle longer than anyone thought possible. Zhuge Liang's machines became extensions of his strategic brilliance. The stories of the giant crossbow traveled far beyond the battlefield. Chronicles described them in almost mythical terms, blending fact with legend. To later generations, Zhuge Liang wasn't just an engineer, but a sage whose wisdom reshaped war. In Chinese folklore, his inventions often appeared larger than life, painted as miraculous weapons forged by a mind blessed with divine insight. Whether every detail was true or not mattered less than the lasting image. Zhuge Liang, as both scholar and warrior, someone who used intellect as his sharpest blade. Historians today debate whether the giant crossbow was as effective as legends claim. Some argue it was more symbolic than practical, used sparingly because of its size and reload speed. Others suggest its psychological impact alone justified its use. What we do know is that Zhuge Liang's designs weren't random. They were deeply calculated attempts to equalize Shu's disadvantages. Whether myth, fact, or something between, his giant crossbow reflects the ingenuity of ancient warfare, where perception often mattered as much as physical destruction. Beyond engineering, the giant crossbow symbolized Zhuge Liang's philosophy of war. He believed intellect outweighed brute force. He rarely sought direct confrontation, instead using inventions, strategies, and clever deception to achieve his aims. The crossbow was a weapon of control not just over the battlefield, but over the minds of his enemies. This blending of mind and machine set him apart from other commanders of his age. Even today, military historians view Zhuge Liang as a strategist, centuries ahead of his time. Interestingly, the legacy of these weapons echoed far into the future. Later dynasties developed new siege machines, including trebuchets and ballista-like devices, many influenced by earlier crossbow concepts. Even in Europe, medieval ballistae resembled the same principle, giant bows hurling deadly bolts. While we can't prove direct influence, Zhuge Liang's designs show that across cultures, great minds often arrived at similar solutions for war. His crossbows were not just tools of one kingdom, but part of the larger human story of innovation under pressure. The giant crossbow also became a cultural icon. Chinese dramas, novels, and artworks often portray Zhuge Liang standing beside these immense weapons. In the famous novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, his machines are described with awe, sometimes bordering on magic. These depictions cemented his legend far more deeply than battle records ever could. For generations, the image of Zhuge Liang was inseparable from his ingenious war machines, symbols of wisdom triumphing over brute force. What's fascinating is how the giant crossbow still inspires curiosity today. Modern engineers and enthusiasts attempt reconstructions, trying to determine how effective it really was. Some models demonstrate surprising power, launching bolts hundreds of meters. Others highlight the mechanical challenges of scaling up a bow. Either way, these experiments keep Zhuge Liang's spirit alive, showing that even 1,800 years later, people remain intrigued by the strategist who turned imagination into weapons of war. The crossbow of Zhuge Liang is more than a weapon. It's a reminder of how ingenuity shapes history. Wars aren't only won by numbers, but by creativity, by leaders who see possibilities where others see limits. His inventions prove that the human mind is often the sharpest weapon on the battlefield. For Zhuge Liang, every battle was a chessboard, every move calculated, every machine designed not just to kill, but to control the pace and psychology of war. That's why his legend endures. Though Shu eventually fell, Zhuge Liang's reputation outlived kingdoms. His giant crossbow became a story told across Asia, symbolizing intelligence against overwhelming odds. Today, it represents not only military invention, but also human resilience, how ideas can outlast empires. Standing in front of a replica, one doesn't just see wood and iron, but the vision of a man who believed knowledge could rival any army. The weapon may be gone, but the mind that forged it remains immortal. So, was the giant crossbow of Zhuge Liang truly as powerful as legend says? Maybe not in raw mechanics, but in influence, absolutely. It terrified enemies, inspired allies, and carved Zhuge Liang's name into history. His story reminds us that sometimes one invention can change the course of wars and leave ripples for centuries. If you enjoyed uncovering this piece of forgotten history, imagine what other strange weapons lie hidden in the past. Stick around, because the next story might surprise you even more.